It's been a long day, so thank you for making it through and surviving till my presentation, because I'm barely survived myself. So, and I have not been listening to most of the other parts, so if you were going to all the other sessions, you should be much more tired than I am, but still showed up to learn what the HP Virtual Connect technology is. So that's what I'm going to be talking about for the next 30 minutes, giving you the overview of what the HP Virtual Connect is and how it might help you to build the better virtual infrastructures. Okay. So we have to start definitely with some kind of the analysis of the current trends, because that's the way you usually start any presentation. And generally we are at an event organized by VMware, which means that probably all of you are using server virtualization in your infrastructures, because that's basically what have rapidly changed the IT infrastructures during the last 5 years. And of course, we are talking about the cloud services a lot. And I have just counted out of the all sessions in the agenda today, 10 of them had the cloud word in their title. And probably if I would be paid $1 for each time then the speaker says cloud today, I would have left with at least 500 bucks. It became kind of the buzzword which IT technology, IT industry always like to pick some buzzword to use heavily for the course of the 2 or 3 months. But generally what we see that from being the buzzword, it becomes the real solution and the real technology now much more often when we initially started to talk about this kind of infrastructures 2 or 3 years ago. Another big trend is the change in the customer profile, because all of a sudden, practically each of us, which carries some kind of the mobile device like smartphone or tablet or whatever, became a very big customer. Not kind of any of us as a separate person, but we all together are responsible for about 50% of the data being transmitted daily between the different systems and the different IT environments. And as a result, because one of the things that the consumers don't like to do, they don't like to wait. If you want to have something on your smartphone, you want to have it now. You want to have it quickly. You want to have it available when you need it. So all of this creates a lot of opportunities, but it also introduces a lot of changes, and some of these changes lead to new challenges into the IT infrastructures. And one of them is increasing complexity of the networking connection at the server side. The server virtualization helps us to simplify the server infrastructures, but it generates much more heavier requirements for the networking at the server edge. Something which used to be the most simple stage in your network, connecting the server to the network. Hell, what could be more simpler? Just take the patch cable, plug it into the server, plug it into the switch, and you are done. Now, when we're talking about the hypervisor hosts, we have all kinds of new challenges with many different network interfaces needed, many different configurations, converging data and storage networking, something which have not been actually an issue before the server virtualization took off. So we have to provide it, we have to manage it, we have to make sure it provides us some security capabilities, because our virtual environments are multi-tenant. We do host many different systems, which might belong even to many different customers on the same physical hardware, and they all would like to be sure that the data is secure and not accessible by somebody else. And we also have to implement all these changes quickly. So our networking infrastructures, our server connections have to be reconfigured on the fly, usually in a very short period of time, without actual physical change to the network itself. And still, the budgets are not getting bigger, because when we talk about the server virtualization, when we talk about the cloud services, the main idea and how the businesses look at it, it's the way to make your infrastructure more efficient, also from the cost point of view. So we cannot take a hell lot of money to implement all this fancy stuff. We have to do all this fancy stuff with a lot less money than before. So these challenges also come from the fact that the changes are quite dramatic. And probably this figure up here, because it is from the Gartner, which said, but by the end of the 2012, which is basically this year, half of the workloads will be virtualized. And in fact, the latest update, which I have not put yet in this slide deck, is that by the end of the next year, we see that it might go up to the 70%. But I believe for our countries, because we didn't have the legacy of supporting and running all the older systems that cannot be migrated to the virtual infrastructures that easily, I think for our countries, we are well above 50% already. And the changes in the networking side lead to the quite interesting paradigm that the nature of the network traffic changes. And it used to be, as probably also my colleague Chris already told this morning in his keynote, the most traffic in our data center used to be the north-south, so we are going from the lowest layer of our networking topology up to the highest level. Now we see that this changes to the east-west traffic. The servers are talking to each other much more than they do talk outside. And also some of the tests and evaluations show that, for example, if you're talking about the bladed infrastructure, about 50% of the server traffic stays within the enclosure which the servers are located in. So this creates the problems and changes that we decided to address with the technology which is called HP Virtual Connect. And it's not something which we have come up with yesterday. Actually, the Virtual Connect has appeared on the market together with the HP Blade System C-Class in 2007. But we keep updating and developing and trying to make it even better suited for the today's needs. And there are two main areas in which the Virtual Connect technology addresses these changes and makes them simpler and easier to use and more suitable for the modern environments. First, we want to simplify all the changes which happens to your server connectivity. Instead of talking to all the different admin groups, talk to the network guy, talk to the storage guy, asking them to make the particular changes, do the recabling physically, we make Virtual Connect automate all of this to make sure that all the standard changes to your server infrastructure, like adding new servers, moving the workloads from one server to another, replacing the failed server, can actually be done without actually touching any physical hardware, without actually making any configuration changes in the networking configs. And the second, we would like to make the connection simple. We would like to consolidate the server connections to make all the necessary connectivity available for the server with the very basic config, with the minimal number of the hardware parts. And actually what we are currently doing with the latest Virtual Connect products, if you're talking about our C-Class Blade system, we can provide all of the connections which most of your servers will need by just 2 additional interconnect modules which go into the enclosure. So for the most environments, that's probably going to be it, which is needed for the providing all set of the connections which are required by your virtualized servers. Okay, so what actually HP Virtual Connect product family looks like. So we have the C-Class Blade enclosure, and the back of it looks something like this. And are there any HP C-Class Blade customer in the room? Just one? Do you use Virtual Connect? Do you use Virtual Connect? No? Okay. So at the back of the enclosure, we have 8 module slots where we can install the connectivity modules, which initially used to be the standard LAN switches, the standard SAN switches, or the pass-through modules, which are generally just the basic switches or just a pass-through, which is kind of the patch panel to bring out the connections out of your server environment to your external networks and to your storage infrastructure. With the Virtual Connect modules, we are making it more simpler, and we also have a couple of options for you. Depending on what your infrastructure looks like now currently and what you're trying to achieve, you can go a couple of different paths. First, if you want to have the fully converged environment, a premium offer here would be the Flex Fabric module, which actually provides you the capability to configure all the LAN and SAN connections for all your Blade servers with using just 2 modules. So you consolidate all the connections, all the LAN connections and all the SAN connections using the standard 10G converged network adapters integrated on the Blade servers. And if you do not require fiber channel, if, for example, you're using iSCSI or NFS for storage access, you can also have a bit more simple version, which is Flex 10, which takes away the fiber channel component of it. But if you would like still have or would like to keep the separate connections for your LAN and SAN, we can still give you an option to use separate connections, which would be the Flex 10 module for your Ethernet needs and the Virtual Connect fiber channel modules for your storage area networking. So the life of the Virtual Connect. So the product is still quite young, but already quite successful. As I mentioned, we started initially in 2007, which was shortly after the C-class blades have been introduced, but we have brought to the market the Virtual Connect module. And initially, we were focusing on making the connections simpler and making these changes simpler. Next step, we really wanted to add the scalability to that solution. So we introduced Virtual Connect Enterprise Manager, which can be used as a central management interface to manage many enclosures through the single interface, to make the changes to many enclosures at once, to centralize the management of the environment. The next step was Flex 10 technology, which allows us, and actually not really allowed us, but where we made the good use of the 10G technology, because we have been integrating the 10G ports as a default port starting from the generation 7 of the ProLiant Blade servers. So we had enough bandwidth. And we wanted to have the way to make efficient use of that bandwidth. So the Flex 10 technology provides us an opportunity to chop each 10G connection into 4 separate parts, which we were calling Flex NICs, which are capable to carrying different network traffic. And by doing that, we made away from the necessity to have multiple interconnect modules and the multiple adapters in the same server. And the last advancement of this technology came in 2011 when we have introduced Virtual Flex Fabric module. On top of the consolidating Ethernet connections, we introduced the way to converge network and data connections using the same 10G converged network adapters. So one of these chopped interfaces, together with the Flex Fabric module, can now be used to carry your fiber channel traffic out to the external network. And in the process, we really see that the Virtual Connect was very well accepted by the market. So at the moment, we are over the 5 million of the Virtual Connect ports sold, and we also do capture quite significant share of the 10G and fiber channel over Ethernet port shipped with the Virtual Connect technology. But Virtual Connect is not only the hardware. Of course, you need the hardware module, but the functionality, of course, comes from the firmware. And we keep constantly updating the firmware to bring you the additional features, not only to support the new models that we release, but also to improve the functionality and make new features available for you. The latest new feature release was version 3.3, where we have had multiple things, mainly targeted towards making the Virtual Connect support bigger infrastructures, increase the number of VLANs we can support. We have added the performance monitoring statistics which can be collected in a much more convenient way than before, because you really, by consolidating that many data streams, you want to know what happens inside your network environment. And some additional security features. So with the Virtual Connect firmwares, we keep adding features, and you're going to see the new version also quite soon. I cannot really give you the details really at the moment because it's not an NDA session, but you will see some new firmware versions and new hardware models as well. Okay, so let's now look a bit more in detail on those two areas, simplifying change and simplifying connections. First, with the simplifying change. At the heart of the Virtual Connect technology, when we talk about making the changes in configuration simpler, is the very simple but quite brilliant idea of taking all the needed configuration, which describes the connectivity of a blade server to external networks, and store it separately in a server profile. This server profile is stored by the Virtual Connect module, so it's not attached to any blade server particularly. And it describes the MAC addresses which are going to be used, the parameters of the networking connections, what uplink ports I'm going to use, what VLAN parameters, fiber channel VVNs, and the storage connections, which now also define the fiber channel or iSCSI connections with the latest generation of the product. If you do boot from SAN, you can also include your storage boot parameters as a part of the Virtual Connect profile, the virtual serial number of the server, and any configuration required for the failover of the profile. So this is stored separately, and this server profile is not actually stored at the server level. If you're talking about the enclosure, what actually we do, we can assign the server profile to particular blade slot, even when it's empty. So you can do all the configuration initially when you install the C-class blade enclosure with the Virtual Connect modules. Pre-assign the profiles to the particular blade slots. And any blade server which is going to be installed in this slot is going to absorb all the parameters which are part of the server connection profile. This makes the adding new servers and a very easy process, because practically what you have to do is just to push the server into the slot of the enclosure. The second thing what we can automate is profile moves. If you want to move the connection profile to the different blade server with maybe more hardware resources because it's needed now, all you have to do is to reassign the server profile from its current blade slot to another blade slot. And actually, all the parameters will be overtaken by the different blade server, but external networks and external SAN won't even know that the blade server has changed, because for them, it's still the same MAC address, it's still the same VVN, it's still the same serial number. It just keeps running. And the third way is what you actually can do is the hardware is the hardware. It breaks from time to time. So when you have to replace the failed server, all your connection parameters are stored separately. So again, the external networks don't have any idea that you have replaced the failed server with the new one, because all the connectivity just remains the same. So all these have been available since the very first version of the Virtual Connect in 2007. We just keep expanding the server profile to include additional parameters lately connected to the fiber channel over Ethernet and iSCSI technologies. But generally, you can upgrade your Virtual Connect modules from the first initial ones to the latest Flex fabrics and still utilize the existing server profiles with the slight change. Another feature which came with the latest version is that the server profile can help us with the security settings. Because network administrator, when he creates the network configuration, can separate the configured networks into different groups. And what we won't allow to assign the different network groups simultaneously to the same server profile. This way you can make sure that the VLANs that you have to keep separated will stay separated because they cannot be assigned to the same server simultaneously. So that's the way for the network administrator to be sure that server admin, when he later does some changes to the server profiles, he actually can't break the network design which is done initially. So, in a very schematic way, that's approximately how it looks. If you take the Virtual Connect Flex Fabric module, we have some uplink ports used for SAN connectivity with some SAN connections configured. We have some LAN ports used for LAN connectivity with some networking parameters configured, and we have the server profile. Here is a Flex 10 technology, which actually separates the 10G port to have the 4 Flex NICs, and one of them is Flex HBA to carry iSCSI fiber channel over Ethernet traffic. And now if we imagine that this server has failed, what basically we have to do to move all the workloads and the connections to another blade is just reassign the server profile, and it will move all these parameters and all the configurations and all the connections automatically. No need to go and manually change any configuration parameters on the blade server level. If you remember a couple of slides back, I have been telling that there are 2 ways that we are addressing this complexity. First was to simplify the changes, and second was to simplify connections. So far, the server profiles do a very good job helping us to simplify change. Now let's see how we can deal with the complexity. And here is our Flex 10 technology, which helps us to do that. So the basic idea is very simple. If you take the standard blade configuration, which have been doing for the virtual infrastructures 4 years back, well, if we go to the best practices, it says it would be nice to have 4 or 6 LAN interfaces per the virtual host and 2 storage interfaces. So we have to use the 2 standard integrated LAN ports, we have to use 4 additional network ports, we have to put additional card to use storage ports, and we have to put 8 connectivity modules at the back of the enclosure. So if we calculate it for the 16 servers, we get 16 times 2 for the adapters, 32, and 8 Virtual Connect modules, 40 different hardware parts. Now what Flex 10 does, it carves up the 10G connection into 4 separate connections. So by doing just the Flex 10 for the network connections, we can move from the 40 parts to 2 parts because all our networking connectivity can now be done by just 2 integrated ports. And all we have to add is the fiber channel card and the fiber channel Virtual Connect modules. And the next step was, if we have the 4 connection parts and we have 10G converged network adapter, let's use one of these 4 connections for the data traffic. Is it fiber channel over Ethernet or iSCSI? And by doing that, we actually can move down from 40 parts just to 2 parts, because we get the blade server, and starting from the G7, 10G converged network adapters are parts of the standard configuration. So all you have to add is actually 2 Virtual Connect Flex Fabric modules. Just like that, from the 40 different hardware parts to 2 different parts, and still having the same number of connections. And if you compare it to the configuration which we were making 4 years back with the 1G Ethernet and the 4G fiber channel, we actually get roughly more than 40% more bandwidth with 2 10G converged network adapter ports. So that was the latest addition to the Virtual Connect family, Virtual Connect Flex Fabric module. If you look here, how do we get these separate fiber channel and LAN connections out of the Virtual Connect? Well, the idea is very simple. We have the 8 uplink ports and 4 ports on the right can actually accept either fiber channel or 10G SFP modules. So depending on how many uplinks of which type do you need, you just configure the particular SFP and connect it out to your standard SAN, whatever vendor SAN you are using. Is it Cisco or Brocade? And if you do not need fiber channel, if you're fine with the iSCSI, then you can use a bit cheaper Flex 10 module. And Flex Fabric adapters integrated on G7 and Gen 8 blades, and you can also add them as a mezzanine cards to the G6 blades. So that's pretty powerful solution to significantly reduce and simplify the configuration inside the blade enclosure and still provide all the connectivity needed, but in a much more streamlined and simple way. The changes become even more significant if we compare it to the standard rack mount server configuration, because the Virtual Connect Flex Fabric was really the moment when we started to see the upfront cost benefit out of the blade system. We are not just talking that it's more integrated, it provides better power consumption, it provides you streamlined management, but without the need to actually configure all these extra adapters, switches, transceivers, cables, we really start to see the upfront price of the bladed configuration, which utilizes Flex Fabric, to be better than the similar configuration using the rack mount servers. So that kind of then enabling technology to really bring out the most benefits out of your bladed environment. So that's how the configuration might look like. So here are whatever way you want to use it. Do you want to utilize each port as a single connection, or you want to go all the way max to 6 Flex NICs and 2 Flex HBAs? And if the default ports are still not enough, you can add up to 2 more Flex Fabric adapters per server to bring the total bandwidth up to 60 gigabits per second. The throughput of each Flex NIC can be adjusted in 100 megabit step, so you can actually provide each connection exactly the bandwidth it needs and it requires, so you do not have to over-provision connection just thinking, well, I'm not sure it's going to be enough after 1 year. Well, you start with the initial configuration and you can adjust these bandwidths when you see how actually your applications and your infrastructure behaves. And where you go with your uplink connections going out to your Ethernet, fiber channel, and iSCSI networks. All with just 2 modules and the standard integrated network ports on your blade servers. Which gives us quite nice configuration when we're talking about the VMware recommendations about how the network configuration for the standard hypervisor host should look like. Because kind of the best practices we are used to is having 6 LAN interfaces and 2 storage interfaces would be really nice. So that is actually what we can provide with just standard integrated ports and the 2 Virtual Connect modules. You get the separate network for the service console, you get your vMotion network, You get your virtual machine network, and you have your storage connections, just with the standard integrated ports. So no more additional adapters, no more additional switches, no more additional cables, and that kind of stuff. And by the way, to use fiber channel over Ethernet on the Flex Fabric ports, you do not have to buy additional license. It's enabled by default. Yeah, so that's how the connections are configured. Here comes your SAN administrator. When you install the enclosure, configures the SAN fabric parameters. And for the external SAN fabrics, the Virtual Connect connection just looks as one server with a lot of fiber channel interfaces. It utilizes NP-AV technology, so basically you can connect it to any existing fabric. It doesn't consume additional fiber channel domain ID, it doesn't impact the existing ones, and it also supports some advanced features of Cisco or Brocade fabrics. Very nice and done. Then your LAN admin comes and configures your network parameters. And again, the uplink port of the Virtual Connect for the external network will look as a server with a lot of network interfaces. You can configure trunking, you can configure VLANs. Do you want to use the VLANs in the pass-through mode, which means that we are just passing through the tagged VLAN to the host, or we can actually make Virtual Connect assign tag on an egress, depends on your configuration needs. We do not participate in the spanning tree protocol to avoid looping and to make this connectivity transparent for the external switches. And we also have some loop control prevention mechanism to make sure just by plugging some cables, by mistake you won't create loop in your network and you won't bring your network down. And then gives your port, which utilizes all this connectivity as described in the server connection profile. Well, that's fine for one enclosure, but what if I have more than one enclosure? One thing we can do, we can stack up to 4 enclosures with the Virtual Connect modules by utilizing the uplink ports to create the single Virtual Connect domain. One of the benefits it gives, because we are capable to contain the internal traffic. Remember all this east-west traffic, server talking to server, the motion between the servers. It stays within the Virtual Connect domain. It doesn't have to go to your external network, which saves the bandwidth and does not introduce additional latency. And it also improves reliability, because any out of the 64 servers in these enclosures can use any uplink which is available here. So no matter if you have the failed Virtual Connect module, if you have the failed uplink switch, upstream switch, if you have the failed cable, your server will still find an uplink the way out of this environment. And you still have the common single management interface to manage all this Virtual Connect domain, even with up to 4 enclosures. Well, this brings us to the point that we have been mentioning, that we are capable of containing the server traffic inside the Virtual Connect domain without utilizing uplinks, which means that we have no oversubscription, we have the lowest possible latency, and your vMotion stuff, your server migrations, probably gonna work much faster than with the traditional environment. Because when we try to apply the classical hierarchical network design to the virtual infrastructures, we make this server-to-server traffic go up the hierarchy and consume the uplink bandwidth, and this creates additional latency, and also it's not really good for the performance of your networking infrastructure. But then used in a Virtual Connect environment and potentially combined with the IRF technology which HP networking guys provide, which allows you to create the fast mesh of multiple layer 2 switches, we can have very flat networking design with the minimal number of hops between the servers. And according to our tests, we really see the very big performance benefit out of this. Management. So how do we manage the virtual connect environment? Because the technology seems to be nice, doesn't really cost me an arm and a leg to manage it. If you have the simple environment, which consists of single enclosure or the single virtual connect domain, we are actually running the management interface on the virtual connect module itself. So all you have to do is to connect to the virtual connect module management interface, and there you have all the configuration and the management and the monitoring tools. And if you're familiar of how a ILO management interface looks like, or onboard administrator into the blade enclosure, or system insight manager, it's basically very simple structure. So for anybody familiar with the way we build graphical user interfaces for our management tools, there will be no surprises, and it will be quite easy to pick up. We also have the different user roles set up, so you can actually assign the user the rights to do only what he is allowed to do. So if he's server administrator, he can manage the server profiles, he can assign server profiles, but he cannot do any changes to the networking configuration or to the SAN configuration. And vice versa. If it's network administrator, he can do changes to the network configured, but he cannot actually do any changes to the server profiles, which might be good to solve the never-ending problem of who is the boss, because usually the network guys hate blade servers, because blade servers are intrusive for their responsibility area. Now suddenly there are some boxes which do have some networking equipment, and this networking equipment is managed by the server guy. And the server guy, he doesn't know what is needed for my network. So this way we allowing them to still be responsible for their responsibility area, but provide different administrators, different responsibilities inside the same management interface. So that's the Virtual Connect Manager, and if you're really up to it, there's the command line interface, and everything what you see here can be scripted, and this is actually what we utilize in our cloud system product. The way the automation software runs, when we configure the connections, automatically we actually do run some command scripts, predefined command scripts, which are configuring the virtual connect in the way that we want it to behave. What if you have multiple enclosures? In this case, we can take the management of the infrastructure out of the virtual connect module and put outside the Virtual Connect Enterprise Manager. What actually it does, it talks to all the Virtual Connect modules what you have there, but it holds the central database of all the server profiles, of all the connections. It keeps track of the assigned network addresses. Make sure you do not use the same MAC address twice, because it's not gonna be fun if you have the two different servers using the same MAC address or VVNs. We can set up the master profiles. So each time you have to change something for the multiple Virtual Connect domains, you just have to change the master profile, and the changes will be propagated automatically down to each server. It will also provide us the capability to make the server profile failover between tens and hundreds of enclosures, and those enclosures might be located at the different sites. So we can also switch server connection profiles to the different site, of course, making sure that all the networking parameters configured will still be valid. So that's a very good way to consolidate the management of the bigger Virtual Connect environment and still have single pane of glass and automation to manage really big and huge environments. The Virtual Connect Enterprise Manager can support up to 1,000 enclosures in a single interface. Yep, we are getting closer to the end. Just a couple of slides left. So we also have the way to bridge the management of the hardware infrastructure to virtual environments. So we have the management plugins for the vCenter. And by doing that, you can actually use the vCenter as a single interface to have the full picture of your servers, power and cooling parameters, your networking connectivity, and your storage. So if you have the inside control license for your ProLiant server or Blade, which is actually not much more expensive than the inside ILO advanced license, you get these plugins. So you just go and expand your vCenter configuration to actually provide you the management interface, which not only can look into your virtual infrastructure, but also into your hardware infrastructure. And one of the parts of it is actually providing the vCenter, the virtual infrastructure administrator, the complete picture of how the networking connectivity is organized, taking into account our virtual connect modules and external switches. So by doing this, by looking at this screen, you will get the very clear picture of what kind of the server profiles are used by each server, what kind of network parameters correspond to particular server connections, which makes life much, much simpler because you have the single screen which shows you not only how your networking is configured for the virtual host, but also how it's configured inside your Blade enclosure. Well, it's 5:10 already, probably terribly too late to talk technology stuff, so this is actually the last slide of my presentation. If you have not analyzed or take a deeper look at the Virtual Connect technology before, I really advise you to do that. We have many tools available to help you get more information about the technology. If you talk to the Bluebridge guys, we have the Virtual Connect simulator, so we actually can get the live experience, how the product is configured, how you do configure those flex NICs, and how you do configure those network interfaces before you actually sign up for the real stuff. And we see the Virtual Connect the most convenient, the most easy, and the most flexible way to connect your Blade servers to external networks, no matter what kind of external networking design do you use. Any questions? Yeah, I understand it's too late for questions, definitely. So thank you a lot for your time, and it was a pleasure to be here. Thanks.